Hi, I'm Nicholas Lodge and welcome to the Flower Pro Ultimate Petal Vaner. This is a very innovative product designed by myself with collaboration with Katy Designs, and this particular vaner is used for obviously roses but also many other flowers. That's why we call it the Ultimate Petal Vaner. So you can use this for sweet peas, you can use it for wide petals of roses, you could use this also for certain varieties of orchids, poppies, so many flowers can be done with this. The design is very innovative in that what we've done is we've tried to put all of the information you need onto one vaner. This is a double-sided vaner, alright, so we actually will use this, which you're going to see in a few minutes time, where we're actually going to press the paste together in sandwiches together. And when making roses, we have obviously here for the first layer, the number sequence, for the second layer, the third layer, and the fourth layer, depending which size you're going to take your roses to, which I will be showing you all of the stages. This vaner is quite large, and it's made to accommodate all commercially available plastic 5-petal quick rose cutters. Here you can actually sort of see the 3 sizes of roses. Alright, so this is the large size rose. This is made with the 110mm or 11cm cutter. This is the pink rose here is made with the 9cm cutter. And then here you can see the yellow rose, smaller one here, is made with the 7cm cutter. So now we're going to move on to the next step, which is going to be actually to start off with a white cone as shown in the rose cone and thorn mold segment. And this is in gum paste, and this is obviously dried, alright, so you need to make this several hours or even the day before you need it. So this is going to be a white cone, and what I'm going to do is going to first of all show you how we make what we call a bud. Now generally, when I teach roses, if I'm making just one rose with my students, we normally take about a number 14 size ball of paste, and then we would just condition this. So I've conditioned this already, like I showed in the previous segment, a little bit of vegetable shortening or fat, a little bit of egg white, okay? You're going to roll this out, and generally when we roll this out, you want to roll this out to about the size of the cutter. Now when we're working with larger amounts of paste like this, we're going to do the pasta machine in 2 steps, okay? So we're going to actually start off with number 3. So I'm going to do number 3 setting, and generally put your pasta machine on about speed number 4. So I'm going to go through on number 3 first, and then I will change to number 6, alright? Because it's just like if you use a pasta machine to make pasta, you're generally going to, and you can go through there just a couple of times just to level that out. And this will normally give you enough to cut out 2 petals at a time. Now once you get used to using the pasta machine, you of course can cut out multiple petals. You could roll a bigger piece of paste. But remember, if you're working with very large amounts of paste, you want to start off on like number 1, then number 3, then number 5, then number 6 or whatever. Because you can't go straight through on number 6 if you have too much paste. So again, you're just going to press the cutter. You're going to go around in a circular movement. Just going to give the cutter a little whack, and this will give you your little petal shape. We're going to take your vaner. If your paste feels a little sticky, sometimes, especially when you're adding the egg white to it, it might make it a little bit sticky. But as I said, just use a little bit of cornstarch as needed. You're just going to line up the 2 top parts, the Katy the KSD logo here. I'm just going to line that up, and again, just going to use your cake board or a piece of wood, little chopping board. Just press that on to the top here, okay? And then you're going to take your vaner. So this is going to basically vein all of the petals at the same time. And we're going to take this off of the vaner here. Now I'm going to work on the one that's got the numbers on, alright? So I'm going to use the back of this. This is where I find the little scraper. This works great because what I do here is this makes it easy to maneuver this on and off of the silicone. With my balling tool, I'm going to just soften just very slightly. Just a little bit like I did on the bud here. So I'm only really working on about the top, about 3/4 of an inch, about 2 centimeters, okay? As you'll see, as we go through the layers of petals, we will obviously expand that and come further and further around. So remember, whatever side you soften, that will always be the underneath, okay? Because basically when we soften, you are going to lose the veining a little bit because of the ball tool. Now then we're going to take this off of here. So it's going to take this off. You're going to turn this over. It's going to turn this to the heavy vein side, and you're just going to place this onto the vaner. Now, as I said, this is a very, well, we thought a lot about how to make this easy to remember, because sometimes if you have obviously this information written down, you might lose it or misplace it. So you have everything onto the mold, okay? So we're going to start off with layer number 1. This is going to be for basically for a bud. Layer number 2 will make another layer that will make it mid-size. Layer number 3 will be for full size, and layer number 4 will be for fully blown, okay? So this is how we build it. So this is the numbering sequence. You just need to make sure you can see that little hole in the center. We're going to take your dry cone, and with your dry cone, you're now going to put egg white all over your cone. All right, it's going to brush egg white all over your cone here, like that. So that's going to basically make it sticky. And then you're going to just lift this up, and you're going to push the wire through the middle here, like this, all right? So it's going to come up to the middle here, like so. So you just pull the cone so it sits into there. Now you can see layer number 1 will be petal number 1, then you have a comma, then we have 3 and 5, okay? So that we have 3 layers, so petal number 1 is going to be first. This is petal number 1 here. You can use your little companion tool here. This works well. So just with your companion tool, you're going to bring this up to the side of the cone. All right, so you can see how it's actually sitting here like this. Now, when you build this, you can hold your hand. A lot of times I just use my hand like you would hold in an ice cream cone. That's just an easy way to support the weight of the pedal. So what you do here is you're going to tuck the right-hand side here. Just you can see in camera, you see the right-hand side is here. And you want to tuck that in as far as it will go, and then the left-hand side will come around. So now we need pedal 3-5. So this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, number 4, number 5. And so you're going to now take pedal number 3. So we're going to put egg white here, about halfway up pedal number 3, and about halfway up pedal number 5, okay? And again, you can take your little companion here, and you're going to bring this on, and then you're going to come around here, and then you're going to take your next one, and that's going to come up here, and you tuck these in so you create this yin and a yang, okay? And the third layer will be 2-4, so that's pedal number 2 and pedal number 4, all right? So then you're going to then brush your egg white halfway up. So remember, this is actually on the side I didn't soften, and as the rose opens, you're not really going to see the veining so much on the inside petals, but as it opens, it's going to become more. So again, taking your little, so this will be your favorite little tool, all right? So we're going to use this, I'm going to attach that. And so this one will be attached here, and then we're going to come around here. And those will form just like a very slight overlap. So you see how they're going to just overlap very, very slightly inside, but still fairly tight, okay? Because this, remember, is a bud, okay? So we're just going to just attach these into here like so. So just make sure you use, don't use too much egg white, but use enough here just to attach this. I'm just going to just pull this around here. And only bring your egg white about, as I said, when you do the petals, only bring the egg white about halfway up, okay? So this is going to be at this stage here. So you can see how you've got the petals. You take this off of the veiner. And then what we're going to now do is just going to just mold around the bottom. So just going to use your thumb and finger just to mold around the base here like so. Now sometimes when you do your roses, the center part can move a little bit. So just using again your companion tool, we're going to use the needle part of the companion tool. We're just going to just close that up and just make sure that that is, as I said, pretty straight. And really the rose at this stage as a bud would almost be a little bit like a tulip in shape. It will be like straight, like a French tulip, okay? So that is how we make the bud, the rose bud. We're now going to move on to the next step, which is going to be the mid-size rose. So now we're going to move on to the mid-size rose. So I've already, just as I did on the previous layer, I've rolled this out, cut it out, veined it, put it on the back of the veiner. So as I explained, each layer we do, we're now going to go a little bit further around with your ball-in tool. So I'm about 1/3 of the total exposed area of the petal. All right, so just going to come around here. So about 1¼ inches, about 4 centimeters around the edge. Remember, it doesn't matter which side you soften this on, but then ultimately this will be turned over. So this is going to be the back of the petal each time. And you're going to then turn this over. So just like we did on the previous layer, we're going to position this onto following our, obviously our sequence. Just make sure you get that in the middle. Now, when you, of course, build roses, if you were making, say, 5 roses, 12 roses, you can do all of the bud stage, then you do the mid stage, then you can obviously take them to whatever stage you want. I'm showing you building this rose all the way through. So generally what I do is just put a little bit of egg white just at the very, very bottom of this. So that will just help to establish it. Going to put the wire through the middle here. This goes through your hole, okay? And then the second layer, which is going to be here, that is going to be petal number 1 and 3. All right, so this is petal number 1 and this is number 3. So what we want to do is, you can see here, the seam where 2 and 4 of the previous layer, which is here and is here, that wants to be directly in the middle of petal number 3 and in petal number 1. All right, so that's sort of how they will sit. So you're going to put some egg white, again, halfway up. On these initial petals, we do the egg white halfway up the petals. So petal number 1 is going to come up, and that's just going to come up like this. So you're just going to bring this up the side, you're going to pinch this around, and then we're going to petal number 3, which we've already got the egg white on here, about halfway up, that is going to come here like so. But this just helps you to get the petal on. Alright, so you can see how these petals are going to be, and they're going to form like a slight spiral. Alright, so they're going to, so again, they're almost like pretty much straight at this stage again. You can see how it's from the side here, just mold around the base. So this is going to give you the first 2 petals. And then the next layer of petals, so we have 1 and 3, comma, then we have 2, 4, and 5. Alright, so we're left with petal number 2, we're left with petal number 4, we're left with petal number 5. Okay? So really this is the ultimate rose, in that we've obviously have the ultimate veining mat, but it's also like teaching you this technique. You see how you've got everything you need on this one amazing veiner. Now you're only going to brush the egg white up about 1/3 of the way up, not quite as far this time. And then all you do is you flip the rose upside down, remove the silicone veiner. You just need to make sure, as you're looking at it like this, that the right hand side of number 4 sits on top of number 5. Okay, so you see how so the right hand side, the right hand side, the right hand side. So you see, as you're looking down onto it, as I'm looking down at it here, the right hand side of each of the petals here is obviously sticking out. Okay, I'm just going to mold this around, because you're forming like a sequence, like when we do flowers like peonies, we do similar. You're going to hold this like a little bit like an ice cream cone. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just tweak the petals. All right, so we're actually going to use your fingers here, and we're going to just tweak the petals here. And with your fingers here, we're going to just tweak. And so this is going to give you obviously the beautiful shape for the formation here, like so. All right, so you see how your petal formation. And then, but just make sure is that the right hand side of each petal, looking at it as the flower is upside down. And then we're going to bring in this is just like a large drying rack. All right, again, there are different versions of this. Generally, you're just going to hang this onto a drying rack like this. So this will then dry for a few minutes before we move on to the next stage. Now we're going to move on to the second to last stage of a possible formation of the rose petals. This is what we call full size. So this is again being obviously cut out, it's been veined. Now the last 2 petals will basically be done exactly the same way, and that is you're going to soften all the way around the exposed part of the rose petal. So you see how I'm actually just softening this around here. I'm going to soften around here. Okay. Remember, the side that's softened will ultimately be the underneath. So we're going to turn it over. You're going to position this onto your rose mat. Now here we're going to layer number 3, which you can see here. Layer number 3, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, and also layer number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is different from the other 2 previous layers. So what we're actually going to do here is we're just going to take your egg white, and you can actually just brush your egg white about 1/3 of the way up on each of the 5 petals. Okay, so you're going to take your mid-size rose. So I've had this hanging upside down for a couple of minutes, and then you're going to just position the rose in the center here, and you want to position so you've got like a sort of a gap here, you have a gap here, have a gap here. So you want to just make sure that one of the petals sits in a gap. All right, so you can see how the sort of petals will go here like that. So you're just gonna now just flip the rose upside down. Okay, we're gonna remove the veiner. And in here, we're going to pretty much do the same thing we did before. We want to make sure that the right-hand side of each petal is on top. All right, so we're going to create this spiral. So you can see the right hand side, the right hand side, the right hand side, the right hand side. So the right hand side of each of the petals is going to be basically sticking out. Okay, and then use just a little bit of corn flour, cornstarch. Then you're going to just press this down, but make sure you get your sequence first before you do this, because you don't want to obviously stick these petals down and realize they're going in the wrong direction. So you see how you're going to mold this around the back. So again, we're going to hold your thumb and finger, like almost like how you'd hold an ice cream cone. All right, and you're going to put your rose into your hand like this. And now again, we're going to now tweak the petals. All right, so with your fingers here, we're going to just tweak the petals like so. All right, and just going to just tweak the petals like this. This will be my fifth and final one. Okay, so this is sort of how you would do the next layer. Now, if you were going to leave it at this stage, all right, what you would do is you take some sponge pieces. So you're just going to cut some small sponge pieces with some scissors. And then you'd use, generally, these are bead-in tweezers. They're silicone tipped tweezers. So what you would normally do then, just taking the bead-in tweezers, you're just going to put the sponge piece under the right hand side of the petal. All right, so you're just going to just tuck that underneath the right hand side of the petal. You go all the way around with that. All right, so you just do the third, the fourth, the fifth. And so that would be if it was going to be left at this stage. Usually when I'm doing this as a fully blown rose, fully blown means fully open, which I'm going to show you the next layer. You can just, you don't have to necessarily do this, but if you're going to leave it at this side, this stage, you'd put your foam pieces under the right hand side, and then you just hang this upside down. So for the last part of the rose, this is what we refer to as a fully blown rose. A fully blown rose means completely open, right? So we have tight bud, mid, full, and now fully blown. So exactly the same process as before. So you can see layer number 3, layer number 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're just following it. So obviously layer number 1 and number 2 are quite different, but obviously the last 2 layers are going to 3 and 4 are going to be easy because they're both pretty much the same. So we're going to take your rose. So this is now at full size. Okay, so remember, you don't have to have the sponge pieces in here. If you're going to make this into a fully blown rose, you can just hang this upside down. And because it's only in generally the outside petals. So we're going to take your rose here. Again, just position this onto the top. And just going to just position this down through the center. And then here, all you're going to do is the middle of a petal. You're going to line up. You can see here, this is the edge of the petal. All right, so you see that's lined up with one of the middles of the petal. So it's just really easy to do. So you're just going to do the same sequence. And then this outside petal, again, you're just going to turn this upside down. We're now going to take off the petal veiner. And again, we just need to make sure that you have this right hand sequence. So you can see that the right hand side, as I'm looking at it here, the right hand side, the right hand side, the right hand side, right hand side, right hand side is all coming out. And then we're going to just mold this around. So you see how I'm just rotating this around with my fingers. So just going to create this around the bottom. Again, we're going to hold your thumb and finger in a circle, and we're going to put the rose into here. And now we're going to just sort of tweak the rose petals to, as I said, give them this beautiful look. So remember, this is, this has been rolled out number 6. And this is what generally I would do in most of my roses I would be making, especially for a client, for a wedding cake. This is a more commercially viable rose. But, when we dust the roses, it really makes them look a huge difference as well. And now we're going to go back in with your sponge pieces. Okay, so we're going to now see the sponge pieces are on there. So now we're going to hang this upside down. And we need to leave that for probably about 90 minutes to 2 hours, ideally, to dry. So once that's dry, as you can see, this is obviously a dry one. Then you will take your foam pieces out. So we take the foam pieces out here, and then this will be ready for the next step, which will be for the CALYX. All right, so you can see how you have your rose here. So now we're going to move on to the CALYX. All right, so CALYX really finishes the rose off. Now sometimes on roses we just use a very simple, just a flat green CALYX if you're putting roses into a spray or a bouquet where you don't really see them. But generally speaking, as I said, a CALYX would always be put on either in a basic application or a two-tone. Now these are the three sizes of calyx that I use for the three sizes of rose. So this is a 40mm calyx, 50mm, 60mm. Because we've made the pink rose, the middle size rose, we're using the 50mm size. Now first of all, when we make roses, so once your rose has dried and you've removed your foam pieces, you're going to, sometimes I leave the rose just like this, alright? So if I was going to use this in a posy or a bouquet or a spray where I really don't sort of see the stem, I would often just leave it with 120 gauge wire. If you need it a little bit like a more of an open structured bouquet, sometimes I would add one wire to it. But if you're going to do your rose, like for example on the white rose here, you can see how the stem is thicker, all right? So when we do like a single stemmed rose, like for Valentine's Day or on a cake where you actually see the stem, a rose in real life has a fairly thick woody stem. So normally if I'm going to do that, I will take two additional 20 gauge wires in this case. If I was doing obviously the small rose, that was made on a 22 gauge wire, so two 22 gauge wires. And on the large rose, you could use either 218 or 220, but I'm adding here two 20 gauge wires. This would be done before the calyx goes on, and you're going to just tape this down. Remember, this is the dry version. Obviously the one I've just shown in the previous segment, you need to let that dry for about 2 hours or so before you put the calyx on. Again, I mentioned earlier on in one of my earlier video segments, I use a food dehydrator a lot. So a lot of times I'll just open the front door of the food dehydrator, and then I actually put my hanging rack in front of it, so then the warm dry air from the food dehydrator actually sort of blows over the roses and dries them very, very quickly. All right, so you see how you've got your wire added to your rose there. So now we're going to move on to next step, which is going to do the calyx. So this is the 50mm calyx. Generally for most of my roses, I use two-tone calyxes. So I have here my green, and I also have here some white. So I have here like a number 12 of green and a number 12 of white, just approximate size. I've already conditioned the greens. I've already added some egg white and some vegetable shortening to that. And I'm now going to do the same with the white. So I'm going to work a little bit of vegetable shortening and a little bit of egg white into this. And then once we've done that, so you want to almost make them like a little bit on the slightly on the tacky side. I'm going to roll this into a log. I'm just going to flatten it. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to now take my green paste, and I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to attach the two together, two pieces of paste together with a little bit of vegetable shortening or white vegetable fat. So you're just going to put just a little bit of vegetable shortening or fat onto the piece. Now, this technique, all right, is something I use for a lot of flowers and leaves. Like when I make the southern magnolia, Magnolia grandiflora, I use chocolate brown and dark green. I sandwich it together, so when I roll out my leaf, the front would be green, the back would be brown. You can also do this technique for roses. Like for example, some roses might be like a burgundy color on the top and then cream on the underneath. So the vegetable shortening or vegetable fat, basically what that does, it fuses the paste together. I'm going to put a little bit of cornstarch, corn flour down. I'm now just going to roll this out. And what you're going to do here is you're going to roll this out to the width of the cutter. Now remember, a pasta machine, what the pasta machine does, it extends the length of the paste. It doesn't make it any wider. So you always want to make it at least the width of, say, the rose petal cutter, the rose calyx cutter in this case, all right? So we're going to go through on number 4. And so we're using here obviously, going to go through on number 2 first and then number 4. And then what I normally do here is I just would cut this into some sections. Alright, so this is going to usually be enough for 2 to 3 calyxes. You will take the cutter and just going to cut out the shape. Alright. I'm going to use the shaft of the stick here. And I'm just going to make that a little bit longer. So I'm just going to just roll the end of this from about the end third. So it just becomes a little bit thinner. Remember, this was number 4 on the pasta machine. And then I'm just going to just pinch those with my fingers here. So just going to pinch them with my fingers. So this will give me the shape like this, all right? So then we're going to take some scissors. So you can just use some fine embroidery scissors, or if you have spring action scissors, these are super fine. These work very well for this particular application of the CALYX. So when I teach, I think of the CALYX as like a figure. All right, so I'm going to use my scissors here, and I'm going to make some little small cuts onto the CALYX. So I'm going to do this on the head. So think of this like the head of a figure. All right, so this will be like your head here, and then I'm going to do this on the two legs. So I'm going to leave my arms plain. So generally when I teach, I always do my rose calyxes in the same way, that I feather the head and the legs, and then I leave the arms unfeathered. All right, so you can see how you're going to have this. So of course, you know, one side of this is green, one side is going to be white. Okay, and then we're going to pop this onto your soft side of your pad. And then here I'm going to use a Dresden tool. If you don't have a Dresden tool, you could use a balling tool, and you're just gonna almost like ball that, but usually with a Dresden tool, which is a pretty standard tool we use in sugar craft and for making sugar flowers, just going to press this with your Dresden tool like so. Take a small round sponge which has got a hole in it. This is what I build my rose on, so I'm going to put this onto the top here. Obviously this is the white side up here like so. And then just going to take my balling tool, I'm going to now cup the middle. Now when we're attaching the rose calyx to the bud, it's pretty much fitted. So what we do with the egg white, we will take our egg white and we will brush the egg white all the way up. So all the way to the top here. So when you attach it, it's pretty much a fitted calyx, all right? When we are doing this when we're doing this on the mid, full and fully blown rose, usually you just brush about 2/3 the way down. So just going to brush about 2/3 the way down here with your egg white. And then we're going to take your rose here. And you see we're using the sponge with the hole in it. Just going to just pop this through. Okay, and just going to bring this up to the rose like this. And you're just going to position it so the calyx goes like in the middle of each of the petals, all right? And you see then you're just going to use your sponge, and now just going to use your sponge. We're going to just simply mold this around the back of the rose. Now, when roses grow, I mean basically the rose calyx can be completely curled back like this. But that is very vulnerable, so especially if you're going to be doing a wide spray with, like, for example, other flowers, other filler flowers, generally, as I said, you want to just have a little bit of movement, but you could, of course, if you're doing a single rose, have the calyx curled way back. But we're just going to give that a little bit of shape here, like so. So now we're going to take a piece of paste, so using your size guide. So we're going to take, for the small rose, we'd use a number 5 ball of paste. For the medium rose, a number 6 small. And for the large rose, a number 6. So this is going to be a 6 small. So you'll take a number 6 that just goes through the hole. And this is going to be used for the ovary. So the ovary is the reproductive part of the rose underneath the calyx. This is actually in the autumn fall time when the rose dies. This is what actually turns orange or red or burgundy. There are some varieties of rose that actually even like almost like a black color. And so you're just going to just slide the piece of paste up the wire here. So this is the number 6 small piece of paste here. And then we're going to use just a little bit of egg white here. So with my egg white brush, I'm going to put just a little bit of egg white around the base here, like so. I'm going to bring this up. Just going to mold this around. So this is going to form your little ovary. And then going to use your companion tool. So with your companion tool, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of integrate the two together. So I'm going to use the companion tool. So you see how I'm going to use this. So this little tool will be, you know, invaluable in making sugar flowers. And so that's going to give you the nice ovary on the back of the rose. All right, so this is sort of how you would do the calyx. So we're going to measure off your paste here. So you do number 2 size. So remember that will be 1/3 below, 2/3 above. And then the number 3 size, again 1/3 below, 2/3 above with the green. Now, Remember, of course, you can make as many of the different size thorns. And these thorns, generally speaking, I usually make these, make however many I need and then attach them. But you could also make them, let them dry and attach them once they're dry as well. So how this works is you're going to take your, this is going to show you first of all the number 2 one. Again, just literally just touch my finger on my vegetable shortening here. And then I'm going to just roll this into a little ball. I'm going to again just pop a little cornstarch, corn flour onto my piece of paste. I'm going to pop that into the mold here. And I'm going to use the little Flour Pro companion tool just to push that into the mold here. And this will actually just fill up the mold level with the top. All right. And then you see what I do here is I just flex the mold, all right? And then I'm going to use my little companion tool here, the needle part. I'm just going to push the needle into the actual thorn. And you see that will then come out. And you can just keep it on there, all right? And so then what I'm going to do here is just going to just sort of pinch the edge of it. So it becomes like a little bit more sort of like a, almost like a sort of a thin edge like the thorn has, all right? Because when you take it out of the mold, it's going to have a little bit of a square edge. So you just like, so it looks a bit like a spearhead, and you're just going to just pop that onto the end here like that, okay? And I'm going to show you that again one more time. So this is going to be the number 3 size. So again, just pop a little cornstarch onto there. Going to pop this into your mold here. And then this one, we're going to just press into the mold. Going to press this in, and again you can just use your knife or your scraper here if you have, just take your excess paste off. So really what you're doing is you're filling this to the mold level, all right? You're going to flex the mold, all right? You're going to take your little pin needle tool, you see, so it comes out there like so, and you can see how the side of this is a little thick, so you're just going to use your fingers each side of this so you create this like an arrowhead. So you create this thin, almost like blade on the edge of it. All right. And so this is going to create these perfect little rose thorns. Now, when you attach the rose thorns to the rose, generally you would do this once you've got the calyx on. All right. So if this, for example, rose, we're going to maybe just lay on a cake. You can do this obviously after you've added the leaves or before the leaves on here as well. And then what you would do there is you would take some paste. Now, several options you can use to stick this on. You can use some piping gel. Piping gel will take a little time to dry. You can take a little bit of green flour modeling paste or gum paste, and you just would add a little tiny bit of egg white to it and mix it through to make a very thick glue. You can also use, this is some Super Bond, which is a strong adhesive, which is what I'm going to use to stick this together. This, as I said, it's got very rubbery and it's sort of very strong, so it sets very quickly. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take my rose and I'm going to take some of the Super Bond. I'm going to just use my needle tool here, and I'm just going to put just a little bit of the Super Bond, or as I said, piping gel will work perfectly okay. You just need to leave it a little longer to dry. Okay, and then you're just going to take your thorn here, and then with your thorn, it's going to just attach the thorn onto the stem here like so. Just going to press that on, and that will give you your little thorn. And then I use the shaft of the tool here just to sort of just blend it in. You see how I'm just using the shaft here, and then the shaft will just sort of blend that into the stem. And then if I was going to add another one a little further down, so this is going to be the larger one, you know, and the thorns obviously want to like curl up like this, okay? Again, just going to just blend this in to here. The reason why I wouldn't just use like egg white or edible glue, it's not going to be strong enough to stick in to hold it, okay? So we're going to use this. Now, when these are obviously, again, when I show you on the video, when I show coloring of these will be colored with a little color on the tip, and then the colors, they will all blend in beautifully, okay? And then once you've got your thorns made, you of course then would let everything dry, and then you would move on to obviously do the coloring.